Hey guys, Paul here. I thought it would be fun to run through my latest single, Commuter Hues, and just show you and talk a little bit about how I made it. It's probably going to end up being quite a long video because it's not the first time I'm trying to do this. And I just realized if I make it too short, it's going to be kind of pointless. And I want people to actually, who watch this and make music, to actually gain something out of it. So I understand it's not for everyone, but it might be fun if you're interested in nerding out about production. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and keep it as short as possible. I'm just going to run through an initial couple of short things to give you an idea. Is basically how I work is I've got a bunch of groups, and I group everything kind of neatly just to keep my to have a good handle on things because it can get messy very quickly. So I've got groups with their respective tracks, and then I usually then process all the tracks in that group as a single unit. That's basically what I do throughout the whole track. You'll also see a lot of these are kind of blue. They're frozen. It just means that they've been temporarily bound to audio in a way to save some CPU because this is a big project and I don't have the greatest computers. So running this with the screen capturing software is putting a lot of strain on my machine. That's also why we're going to have a little bit of latency, which I apologize for. Things might look a little bit out of sync with the playhead, but yeah, I'm hopefully going to sort that out in the future. So yeah, we've got groups, and then some of the groups go to buses. It's usually just my drums. I always do that, so all the groups go to a single bus and again just gets processed as a whole. Same with the bass, and yeah, you get the idea. I've just kind of like also naturally started kind of labeling things a certain color. There's no reason for it really. I've always just done drums in blue, vocals in a kind of peachy color, synths or synthetic stuff's pink, and effects and things are usually purple. So just in terms of return tracks, to save CPU, I'm running a big hall reverb, another big hall reverb that's a bit different. Got a room reverb, then I've got a eighth note delay and a quarter note delay, and then I've got another kind of more orchestral focused reverb. And also then on the master, on the master track, I've got an EQ, and I'm running all my tracks through Slade's virtual console. It's a I'm not going to go into that. That's just kind of it's a very subtle kind of like analog summing thing, just to make it sound a bit more real and less digital. But the main thing on the main bus is I run my master mix through a tape machine. I use Saturn, and I don't. I mean, you can see I'm driving it a little bit, but I'm not adding any volume. I just want a bit of a tape sound. It's, I guess, it's kind of controversial, or like a lot of people, a lot of mastering engineers don't like it when you do that. But I've always kind of prefer to just run my master through tape, and I mix into it, so it's not like I slap it on at the end kind of thing. So yeah, that's the basics of my setup, I guess. I would recommend that you listen to the track first before watching this if you're not familiar with it. It is on Spotify and Apple Music, uh, and Google Play, the usual. Just search for it; it'll be on there. So yeah, let's just get into it. Start with the kicks. Start with the drums. So I've got two kicks that I layered. The one is kind of a standard kind of more of a. It's got a little bit of a click to it. But then I've layered. You can see I've layered like the bigger, fatter kind of dance kit on the main beats, to give it a bit more oomph. Um, and then together I like kind of EQ them so they don't bug each other frequency wise, and then I process them as one thing. The snares are insanely layered, but you'll see they're not the same all over. So as the track builds or needs a bit of space, like things come in and things go out. So it's just kind of to keep things interesting. But let's go to one. This seems to be one of the bigger parts. We'll start. There's only one basic kind of conventional snare in here, and this is this guy. It sounds like this. And then on that snare, I've got a bunch of, like, I've got a lot of claps layered. So I think this was just part of my machine kit, as was this. And then what I did is I layered some actual real claps that I got from Spitfire's Labs. It's a series of free plugins that they've released now recently. It's really high quality, nice stuff that's completely free. I mean, it's very basic, but it's really cool to get you into their stuff. And this one was actually not available on the new version. This was back in the day when it was donation based, so it was for charity or whatever. So you could get them really cheap, but you can get. So I got one that they just did claps and clicks with. It's just a good stock kind of clean thing to have, and then it's a good kind of thing you can use for layering, or it's good source material for processing or sound design. So here I just kept their basic claps. What's cool about this is they're all natural. They're not every clap is the same, and it just adds a bit more of a human feel to the claps. So you can see even some of the timing is a little bit weird, but I like that. So yeah, I'll link this in the description if you want to go check out the lab stuff. It's really cool. Then this is also from Labs. It's just instead of claps, it's just little finger clicks. I've just used this once in the whole track, I think. Yeah, this has got a delay on it to just add a little bit more rhythm to it, but you get the idea. Then there's another clap loop, just a different timing, I think. Yeah, some of these sound a little bit weird because they're sidechained. They're just kind of sidechained to the kick drum, so some of them sound a bit clicky, but it's just kind of out of context. It sounds kind of crappy, but it works in the song. And then I've added some Foley for the very top end. This is just kind of like a crinkly paper thing, I think it was. It's just a bit of a crunch on the top end, and then wet slaps. This was recorded last year sometime. I worked on a film score, and I recorded these. It's basically just a wet t-shirt slapped on concrete, and it makes a really cool snare drum. I just use it for layering here, but I mean, I did very little to this, and you can already see it's quite compressed or fat or whatever. It's all natural. So again, it just adds, not every single one of them is the same, so it adds a bit of a natural layer. And then I just did a little bit. I think I resampled this whole group as one, and then just reversed them. Just a little bit of sound design. It's cool when you kind of reverse a snare. So it just reverses into the hit. So let's just listen to that well, not in context. It's all these guys grouped together. Let's hear what the snares sound like. So you get the idea. It's quite layered, and I think some of them are panned differently to make it wider. So let's just listen to the kicks and the snares together, just so you get an idea of the core, very basic beat. So yeah, that's my basic beat. And then usually I add some crash cymbals. I usually do this after I've got my arrangement down. I just add them. It's something that makes a big difference, but that I don't know, is often overlooked, I guess. But I get, it's just, again, just to accent kind of main parts adds a bit of impact. I usually just for these, I mean, more often than not, I would just use the Ableton stocks kind of samples. You go to drums, yes, yeah, and then you go to drum hits, then you go to cymbal, and I think I usually use these session ones over here. So they've got like different sizes, like hard and soft. So I usually use about two of them, like a hard one and a soft one, depending on where the hit is. So this is a hard one probably. And then this is a softer one because it's at the end of a kind of a break. And then the same thing, I also use these crash swells. It's just good for transitions, like when you're kind of building up to something. It's very basic. So I use that with the actual crash hits, and I think these ones I also just got. It's a Spitfire library. I just bounced my favorite ones, or it might have been Heaviosity. I'm not sure, but like you get a lot of these. It's not. I mean, it's a pretty generic thing, so it doesn't really matter. So I just bounce the ones that I use often, just as a workflow thing. It's like easily accessible. So yeah, and then I just ran all the cymbals through a bit of tape because they often sound a bit too bright. I like to dull them with a bit of analog tape. Shakers and hats, it's just percussion. Again, it's pretty stock standard. This is my hats. This is my shaker. So you'll see that both of them are sidechained to the kick to add a little bit of rhythm, like extra rhythm, because it's easy for them to just sound quite static in a way. And the one's pan more to the left, one's pan more to the right, just to make it a bit wider. And then on top of that, I've just used this little bit of another shaker in the build-up. I think, yeah, this is from, shout out to a fellow South African Elephant. He does a lot of Ableton packs and tutorials. Like he's amazing at that stuff. So I suggest you check him out. His stuff's amazing. This is just basically another cool stock standard thing to use as source material for sound design, or just if you need a little bit of you just need a basic shaker somewhere. I think he's got like low, high, and mid sounding shakers at different tempos. So it's very convenient. You can just drop it in and, you know, make it fit whatever you're doing. So I just had it here in the little intro as an extra kind of build up. And then finally, I've got sticks. I think this is also just a Foley thing. I guess I should play the elephant shaker quickly as well. It's just the slower, lower shaker. And then, yeah, then in context, these guys are just kind of in the intro build up. I'll play it in context. See, so the shakers actually make a big difference because it's quite a basic beat. It might sound very kind of like it's dragging a bit, and the shakers and hats kind of give it like extra momentum. I'll play it and then I'll disable it so you can hear the difference. Yeah, so it makes a big difference and it helps out. I think that's pretty much that for that. Then I added some kind of traditional tribal drums or whatever you want to call it, and I processed it quite heavily. I added like some dirt and I added a retro compressor and I've added like volume automation. It's just because I didn't want it to sound like a static kind of loop and I wanted it to sound a bit more sampled. and I also didn't want it to be like super obvious. It just fills a little bit of the gaps between the main hits, and again it adds interest to the end of this track because I didn't want the end big drum part to be the same as the beginning. So you'll hear it's not super obvious, but it is missed if you take it out. So this is what it sounds like on its own, and it's kind of weird because the volume is kind of all over the place. But yeah. See, that's how I wanted it, and then in context it sounds like this, and then I'll also mute it so you can hear what it sounds like without it. So yeah, that's, and then all of these drum groups go to my main drums bus, where I kind of do the final processing, put it through some tape, some more like glue compression, some more compression, some more tape. I do love me some tape. So yeah, and then we can move on to the bass. The bass is a bit weird because it's kind of sacrilege to have two sub basses, but it was an odd case in this track. Let me show you. Well, let me play you what it sounds like. This is my bass group. So it's basically just a sub bass and like an 80s kind of arpeggiated bass. This is also the only one I didn't bounce for some reason. But anyway, so it initially started out with just the one sub bass, which sounds like this. See, so I just kind of ended up arpeggiated it because I like that it added a bit of drive to this main kind of 80s kind of arpeggiated bass. And again, this would usually be a more fuller sound, but I killed the bottom end or a lot of the sub on this arpeggiated to have more control over the sub in this track. So you'll see I EQ'd it probably. Yeah, I killed a lot of the lows. So it works with this guy. But this is what it sounds like on its own. It's very kind of mid sounding. But see, what happened then is that I realized that just these two, if I mute the sub bass, let me show you. If we play this, just the bass, you'll see these are the fundamental notes. And I mean, it's fine, but I wanted to add a bit more sub over here, and that's why I added this guy, and you'll see this adds that. There we go. So that's the actual sub bass, and it's quite low. It's quite low, and it's quite a dangerous thing to do because you don't really want to do that. Because the low end is difficult enough, you don't want to make it more difficult. And that's apparently what I love torturing myself. So again, I hardly ever do this. I just felt the need for it in this case. But I wouldn't recommend it. It was just a frequency thing. I just saw I had a gap in the overall frequency spectrum that I wanted to fill, and it's kind of more the bass you feel opposed to hearing because it's so low. And I mean, I don't even think you'll hear this without headphones. Yeah, so that's the bass again, and then I took all of them. I mean, they're also EQ'd and side chained to each other, so they kind of work nicely together. And then I just processed it as one thing. Then we've got the vocals. I made this with Machine through my sampler. How I usually, I mean, I think this is such a big part of the kind of inverted commas watermark high sound is all these choppy things. I basically just took, it's what, 9 tracks? It's 9 different samples that I chopped little syllables out of, and then took those syllables and tuned them or stretched them or sound designed them to make basically my own little vocal instrument. So I just tapped this out with the beat and made these 2 little melody lines that I used. The first one sounds like this. Yeah, and then I think this is the kind of intro main one. Yeah, so I mean, it's just a bunch of snippets of different sources. So this is like the first one. So I'm not going to go through all of them. You get the idea. And then together, it's the same samples, just play differently to get the 2 melodies. And then once I was happy in Machine, I just kind of recorded them over to audio in Ableton to process. And then again, it's like all these tracks, they're just kind of treated as one thing. And again, there's a lot of processing in here. I added some vinyl sounds, I added more dirt and other effects and compression. And it's the whole thing is sidechained to the kick again for rhythm. A lot of parts it kind of like filters in and out. Additional vox, I'm not going into this too crazy. It's just longer kind of vocal parts that add like more atmosphere. It's just like 2 more arps and a pad. And then instrument chops. This is basically the same I did with the vocals. I just did with an instrument. I do this like all the time. Again, I think it's a big part of the sound. This, I believe, is more like, it's just kind of more like a piano-y sound. Let's just listen. So yeah, it's the same story. It's just this was 7 different piano samples that I just kind of chopped notes out of, and then played my own thing out of it. And I mean, technically, I guess I could have just played this out on the piano with MIDI, but it would have sounded a lot more boring to me because I like that each one of these notes come from a different source, and I don't know. It just has more character. But again, like I think it's literally just a bunch of. Listen, this is the first one. Yeah, so that's basically it. Same story. Once I was happy with it in Machine, I just recorded it over to Ableton and I processed it as one thing. Again, put it through some tape, compression, the usual. Then this is, I don't know, I just call this Gliss Melody. It doesn't really, it's just the little 4 or 5 note little Asian sounding melody that I sprinkled throughout. Again, I just love these sounds, and it's probably because I'm obsessed with Japan. It'll always come through in my stuff. It sounds like this on its own. So all that is, it's the same notes, just played on different instruments. This is a harp. Played up really high, and then the other one is apparently a shamisen. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. I think that's a Chinese instrument. It's just a pluck, like a plucked instrument. So yeah, you can hear the one is like panned to the left and one's panned to the right, and then in the middle, I wanted to just add a little bit of a synthetic feel to it as well. So I just got it playing on a synth in the middle. Yeah, and then together they sound like this. And in context, they sound like this. Yeah, it's just there's only happens 4 times in the whole track, and it just adds that extra kind of, I don't know. It's just I love it. It's just a little extra bit of emotion and feel. So then we get onto the synths. That's just, yeah, there's like a ton of them. Uh, so you can also see I've got groups within a main group here. So I've got the synth chords group and the evolving synth group all in a bigger synths group. So as far as synths go, I tend to just like the kind of normal sounding, old school, nothing too complicated, like simple sounding synths. And this is the case here as well, I believe. So this is the main one. So I've got that in the middle, and then when it comes to layering this, I like to use or make synths that sound similar to the original but a little bit different. Like it's not drastically different, but it's not like exactly the same, because that'll just be boring. Because I guess you could just take this one and duplicate it and kind of EQ it slightly differently and pan it, but I don't like that. I'll just make or use a completely different synth that's similar. So this one, so you can hear it's similar, but it's got a lot more top end. And I've panned that to the right, and then it'll be a similar story here. Yeah, I mean, this is to the right and this is to the left. And then this is probably like a vocally thing. Yeah, and then I've got this weird little vocal stutter, just kind of like auto panning. So I've got one in the middle, one on the left, one on the right, and one kind of auto panning between everything. And it's also, this one is more, just kind of sticks his head out like every now and again. Together they sound kind of more fat and wide and interesting as they kind of evolve. Yeah, pretty stuff. So all of those again, processed as one thing. There's some side chaining going on, and then I've got even a, I don't know. This is probably overkill, but welcome to my life. This is. Let's just listen. Yeah, you can hear. Let me see. Yeah, although these ones kind of evolve and they're not super static on their own. Like you can hear these guys are more kind of erratic in terms of what's happening. You can even see that it goes softer and louder and it's got more peaks and stuff like that. So these ones are also, yeah, they're not happening all the time. I think it just adds extra interest. Let's listen to all of them together in that part. Yeah, so I mean, there's stuff happening all over the frequency spectrum and all over the kind of left and right speaker, and it just makes a nice big fat pad together. So then I've got waves. I do this often where I have these little, it's mostly transitional things where you kind of like have a little swell. I think I used, this is like some more Spitfire stuff. I think these are just kind of strings. So yeah, it's really beautiful, but a lot, and when I'm doing watermark stuff, I don't like it sounding too like orchestral in an obvious sense. So I usually would add a synth to that to make it sound a bit more different and synthetic. So yeah, there's a nice little bit of interplay there, and the synth is obviously distorted. I think I wanted it to stick out a bit more, and there's a bit more top end. So, I mean, it's essentially the kind of, it's got the orchestral vibe, but it's not exactly just that. And again, they're kind of sprinkled all over. And this will obviously also just be more obvious in the quieter bits. So let's listen to it in context. Yeah, I think even this one, is it this one? I added some movement to like. So again, just to make it sound less orchestral and a bit more synthy and interesting. And again, just process this one thing with some volume automation and compression and stuff. Then orchestral texture. This is the texture stuff that I think, I don't know how many people actually pay attention to this stuff, but I love this. It's basically just, I like my stuff to have kind of not sound too clean and have some kind of, it's just, I don't know what to, it's just like, it's an extra level of interest. And in this case, again, this is straight up like orchestral library stuff. But I didn't use it how you would when you're actually maybe composing a classical piece or whatever. I don't know, I think some composer dudes will have a heart attack if they see what I did to this. But I think I just wanted the top end. So you can see I just cut and boosted the top. These are strings, this is strings, and these are woods. I'll play to you now. It's probably the same thing. Yeah, I just killed it at some point in the mids, and then you just got the top end, and then they're processed together as one thing. So the main string one that goes on and evolves throughout the whole track is this one. And then you got the same thing with the woods, kind of, it's just woodwinds. Yeah, and then again, it's not super obvious in the big parts, but in the small parts, you definitely hear it. Yeah, so it's there. This I only added at the end again because I didn't want even the quieter parts to sound exactly the same. So I added some pizzicato strings. Yeah, again, it's like, it's got crazy processing on it. It's like, it's got movement, which is like auto panning and a whole bunch of combined effects to make it move. And it's got volume automation to make it more wavy. So again, it's orchestral, but it's kind of like used electronically in a weird way. So that's that. And then another part of the textures I added, and again, it's debatable if this even needs to be in here, but it's just kind of what I call a post-rock guitar. And it's the same story. It's like heavily processed. It's got like a lot of panning automation. It's got volume automation. Because again, you want to add this stuff, but it's very, very subtle. So you don't want it to kind of like just clog things up. That's why I volume automate. But yeah, at the end, again, you'll probably hear it more obviously. Okay, then all these purple guys are just kind of effects. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. This is just basically shorter and longer risers. If you don't know what a riser is, it's just like a little whoosh. This is a small one. It's just nice to kind of lead into stuff. And then this is a longer one. These were made with Gravity. It's like a cinematic instrument thing. And then with the small one, it just adds at the end there. Yeah, I mean, you can see I used like different ones again just to keep things mixing things up, even if it's like a bit more subconscious. And I don't use these very obviously and very loudly like they would in dance music, but in context. Kind of whooshes into that that next big part. Then we've got one shot effects. I do this all the time. Like when I feel something is, again, you're always battling stuff not sounding the same all over the track. So I sprinkled little one shots. It's like probably a synth swell or like a vocal thing. And a lot of them, like this one, I only use once in the whole track. So you just kind of wherever, I usually do this way at the end after everything's kind of more or less arranged and done. And then I feel like, okay, this part can need a little bit, it needs a little bit of something different. And then I would add this kind of stuff in it. I can't remember exactly what this was. Yeah, see, it's also tuned. Yeah, this is like a little bit more than an octave tuned up, and same with this. Again, it sounds kind of crappy on its own, but in context, it's cool. Yeah, it's a weird synthy thing. So in context, you can hear it. It's this isn't a quiet bit, so you'll probably hear it more obviously. Okay, and then we've got train Foley. This is literally just the sound of a subway train. The whole inspiration behind the track was it was inspired by looking out a window and being all emo in a train. So the initial idea was for the beginning of the track to kind of sound like this is where we're getting on the train, and then this is the journey, and then this is where you get off the train, which is mega lame and maybe a blessing that it didn't work out. So I didn't like the other stuff I had in here, so I just thought I'd keep the train reference in at the end here, which is quite cool. It's literally just. It's like a train stopping and in context. And then finally, just some analog noise. I mean, I go so crazy with vinyl and saturation and tape noise all over my processing and mixing and stuff. But sometimes in the quiet parts, I like to just add a bit of extra noise. This is literally just more like tape floor noise. And again, I mean, if I feel I've overdone it, then I can just mute this or take it out. It's not, but it just adds, it's a part of my sound and a part of like what makes me nostalgic about the sounds that I use and that I like and my music. So, yeah, and that's pretty much it. I mean, this is obviously not, this is kind of the final mix and it's a bit more muddy than it should be, but I usually just fix all the clarity issues in my mastering. So what I'll do now is I'll play the final master so you can hear it and see the kind of playhead running to see what is, seeing that we went through everything now. And then if you have any questions or if there's anything that I didn't cover that you were wondering about, please leave a comment and I'll answer. And then hopefully I'll do another one of these videos for my next single. I'll see how things go, and then hopefully it'll be better or shorter, or maybe I can just focus on certain things. I don't know. You guys give me some feedback, and then I can maybe do these better because I think this is very long. but it is what it is. So yeah, again, just you can listen to the track on any streaming service. You can download it from Bandcamp. And yeah, thanks for watching all the way through, and hopefully we'll do another one of these soon.